I think that if a student has a medium level reading teacher or a medium effective social studies teacher, I don't think that they're at risk for falling all the way out of love with that subject. I think that they're like, you can still recover. You can have sort of a neutral ground social studies teacher your sophomore year, and then your junior year you could fall in love with the subject again, and that felt like a possibility. But with math, I felt like that's not the case. If you have a real tough time, and a teacher maybe that isn't able to create the learning experiences that really help you understand the mathematics and engage with it and see yourself as a learner and doer of mathematics, that sets you up. That trajectory, that's hard to rebound from. So I thought, like, okay, if I'm going to bring try to be the very best at this for students, it's going to matter a lot in math instruction, because it matters a lot when students don't have great math teachers.
I love that. And it really more or less foreshadows what I'm about to ask, which is, how this book in particular came to be. Like, what made you decide to write Common Denominators and to focus particularly on cultivating this engagement and belonging in secondary mathematics?
I think that it's that job teaching math intervention where I really, students that are eligible for tier 3 interventions, I think often the analysis of their skills and conceptual understanding that needs to be developed is in the area of the academics. So the conversation is often around, where are they at with certain math standards? How are they demonstrating understanding of this thing or the other thing when it comes to math? And that's what I was prepared to teach, and that's what I was prepared to analyze. And then I got into the field and realized, like, okay, but also with adolescents, this is an identity development conversation alongside a math skills development conversation. Arguably with all students, that's true. I think it's particularly salient at that secondary level with middle and high school students. And it just became so clear that there is something about like who I am that's related to what I'm able to learn, or this perception of who I think my teachers think I am, or who I am inside of school, this identity piece. And where spaces for math learning have the opportunity to really move the needle for students is by creating spaces where you feel like you belong in here. Your whole identity belongs in here, and that being a learner is a slice of an identity that we can continue to develop, and that we do that through creating these engaging learning experiences where you have access, you have the resources you need, you have the scaffolding and the support, and these two pieces seem to go hand in hand all the time. Engagement and belonging, it's sort of like instruction is inextricably linked to, or like instructional design is inextricably linked to so many pieces of how students experience their learning that day. Engagement and belonging, they just go hand in hand. And what became clear to me in the classroom, and then later consulting nationally when I would facilitate professional learning, like this is true with adults as well, is that we have these almost calcified ways of being when we don't feel like we have access and when we feel like we don't belong. We are rarely hearing students say the words, wow, I feel really disconnected from this learning. But we are seeing behaviors that signal disconnected from this learning, like storming out of class, like talking to their neighbors, like all these other things. Like there are signals to us that we have some work to do to address these conditions in which our students are learning in order to create that sort of engagement and belonging that drives learning overall.